Today is May 5th, 2023, and it's Cinco de Mayo once again. Each year on this day, I make a beer cake, and this morning I decided to go onto TikTok Live and make the cake for an audience. Alright, let's get started, shall we? It is, of course, very important to whisk together the dry ingredients, and that's what we are doing here. But yes, today, of course, is Cinco de Mayo, as all those commercials and everything have said, which here in the US means it's an excuse to have lots and lots of beer. And one thing I like doing on this day is making a beer cake, which is very simple. You just simply take your typical cake batter and add beer to it. Boy, that sure doesn't take a lot of thought, does it? Though, as you can see, we're making this cake from scratch, which is also not a big deal. You know, I'm amazed at all of those silly sitcoms that show the boyfriend or the husband destroying the kitchen to make a cake, basically just to show how incompetent he is. And when your typical cake is very simple and has very few ingredients to it. All I've done here is whisk together some flour, regular sugar, and cocoa powder. Here, we go on with a teaspoon each of baking soda and baking powder. Be sure to have your mise en place, everything in its place. In other words, your preparations all put together. Because like in Ratatouille, they say, keep your workspace clean or I shall kill you. And here's the baking soda. Hey, trouble. Okay. All right. I've got to pause for a moment because I have to give my cat a treat. It's time for second breakfast. That's been their routine. After breakfast, they go out and run around for a while, and then they come back and want second breakfast. Okay, where was I? Oh yeah, that's right. We just added baking powder and baking soda. Whisk it a little more. Whisking the dry ingredients is important, and it took me a while to realize how important this is. It helps to incorporate air into the batter, makes for a lighter and fluffier cake. A teaspoon of salt, one more whisk, and we will go on to the wet ingredients. Again, if anybody is just showing up, like the title of this video says, we are making a beer cake. Not only is it delicious, but what little alcohol there is in the beer evaporates during baking, leaving the taste, meaning that this is actually a kid-friendly cake. You just don't have to tell them about the beer. No one's going to get drunk from it. Finally, okay, that's step one. Bowl number 2. Most cake recipes say to cream together your sugar and eggs. This one doesn't, and yet it's still a very successful recipe. Oh, nuts. Did I leave a piece of shell? Yeah, I think we did. There we go. Always the case, isn't it? There we go. That one was better. And now try number 3. This demonstrates right here that I am not a professional chef. I cannot do yet the one-handed egg crack. Here is where we change things around. Normally we would add a cup of buttermilk. In this case, we are just adding some ale. So, what I also found is it leaves thousands of tiny, tiny little air holes in the cake. Does not ruin the cake, only gives it an interesting texture. So there we go. We've just added our beer. In fact, I believe that's a little bit cheaper than buttermilk these days. Heat up some water, but I'm going to use the microwave because it also calls for 1/3 of a cup of vegetable oil, or canola oil in this case, aka, I don't know if TikTok would even say it, but as you know, would allow me to say it, but as you know, canola oil is also known as RAPE seed oil. Besides, there's another secret ingredient to a chocolate cake, and that is coffee. So I'm actually going to be adding some instant coffee to this. Yeah, that's one of the secret ingredients, as I mentioned. So this is going to be a really healthy cake, as you can see. A lot of canola oil, beer, and coffee. Breakfast of champions, that's for sure. Yeah, no, I don't have a kettle, I'm afraid. 1 teaspoon of cheap instant coffee. There we go. What the coffee does is actually it adds more of a fudge flavor to the cake, believe it or not. Also means I'm going to have to beat these eggs so that the hot water doesn't scramble or boil them. So let's get that going as fast as we can. There we go. Now, like I said, beer, coffee, eggs, and vegetable oil. Aren't these yummy ingredients for a cake? And like I said, I can definitely smell that beer. There we go. All right, now that we've done that, here's a couple of teaspoons of vanilla extract. I use homemade vanilla extract. That's why I have this fancy bottle or decanter. There we go. There we go. Whoops, not that much. That's pretty good. All right. See all these bubbles in the cake? That's the head from the beer. All right. We don't really want to over-mix the batter. So let's dig out our spatula and prepare the cake pan, especially since we are using a very special cake pan, specifically a cast iron cake pan. Now we go on to step 3, which is preparing the cake pan. And this is going to be hot, so we need this. Yeah. I use a method of preheating the cake pan because it gives me wonderful results. There's some Crisco to grease the pan. Blung. All right, this is a blazing hot cast iron cake pan. In fact, it's been heated to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. And yeah, I know, that seems awfully hot, but it's done for a reason. In that once this goes Once the batter goes in, well, first of all, as you can see, it immediately melts this Crisco, which means I just need to cover every inch of the inside here, especially all these crevices. Whoops, let's use this hand. Because, yeah, once the cake goes into the oven, I will lower the temperature to 350 degrees so that the temperature will decrease as the cake bakes. And this will help give us a non-stick cake made in cast iron, not a non-stick pan. Essentially, this is the same way you make cornbread. You preheat the pan and then add the batter to the hot pan, which is exactly what we're doing here. Because if it works for cornbread, it also works for a cake. I'm around the edges, and I think we're ready. So, just like with cornbread, you can add the extra oil to the batter, which is what we will do. Hot pan, in it goes. But there we go. Maybe I should smooth this down a little bit. There we go, that looks a little better. And let's do it. It actually sizzles as you put it into the pan, just like cornbread. The tricky part about this is I always end up getting some batter down the center hole, so I'm just trying not to do that this time. Instead, it looks like it's dripping over the side a little bit, which is pretty typical. But there we go. Well, then we'll just have to wipe this off a little bit. But nonetheless, there we go. And that means this has to go into the oven right away. Here we go. There we go. Yes. All right. The hard part is over. Yeah, turn the temperature down, like I said. There. Now, once we've done this, we just have to wait for 50 minutes. And then the cake will come out of the oven. And welcome back to part 2 of our little cake video, folks. Some of you may have been here about an hour ago. The cake is coming out of the oven right now. That doesn't look too bad. And you can do this with store-bought cake mix as well, you know, the box cake mix. For a pan of this size, you would need to use 2 boxes of cake mix. But rather than mixing in the cup of milk that it calls for, put in a bottle of beer, and this should be the result. Right now I'm just waiting for this thing to cool off for 20 minutes, at which point then we will flip it. In fact, I noticed as well, the cake has pulled away from the sides, which is a good sign that this cake should be able to come out without any difficulty. Let's do it. Okay, now again, this pan is still hot. So, it means I gotta be careful here. Start, of course, by making sure this thing separates from the sides. That doesn't seem like there's any problem at all with that. So far, it looks pretty good. Most importantly, the inside does not look like it's stuck on, which means there's no time like the present. 1, 2, 3. All right, get these gloves back on. Move the trivet to the side. Okay. Actually, there we go. Let's lift it out this way. And there we go. So you can see we've got the handles and everything, which means time now for the moment of truth. Drum roll, please. And ha-ha! Look at that. We have success. We even have a vortex of steam in the middle. We did it. There we go. But that's how we flip a cast iron cake pan. This thing is too hot. I'm going to have to let this thing cool, and I'm afraid. But look at this. It's nice and spongy. And in fact, if you look carefully, I wonder if I can do like a close-up here. You can see it's got thousands of tiny, tiny little air bubbles all over the surface of the cake. That's from the head of the beer head, the foam. As I said, I've made this cake quite a few times, and I really enjoy it at Cinco de Mayo and elsewise. All we can do now is cover the cake, and then around lunchtime or so, I'll be able to frost it. There we go. There is our beer cake. Happy Cinco de Mayo, folks. Yeah, I would love it if you give it a try. So we will see you folks later. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. So, no time like the present. Away we go. Yeah, this is what I mean about I was afraid it might be too runny. Actually, I don't know. It looks like it is starting to congeal. I do believe we might be getting it here. Check this out. There's a lot of spillover, of course, that I'll have to clean up, but I'm not as concerned about that. In fact, by Jove, I think we've got it. Even though it's in it's like up to its knees in chocolate here. Nonetheless, the glaze, look at this, the glaze seems to work. I'll just have to pick up the extras. Here we go. For better or for worse. Good. There, that's what I wanted. Now I can let it cool off. Once again, this is a Cinco de Mayo beer cake. We made this by adding a bottle of beer to our cake batter this morning. And the result, which I have made before, the result is going to be a lovely chocolate cake with just a bit of spice to it. If you haven't tried making a beer cake, I definitely suggest you do so. There's not a lot of alcohol in beer, and what little alcohol there is boils off or evaporates as the cake bakes. So as a result, this is a family-friendly cake. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for your advice on checking this out or testing it. And I do believe we should have a winner. Not that I'm entering it into a contest or anything. But there we go. Thank you for watching, folks. Tonight we will be enjoying our beer cake. Have a good day, TikTok. Thank you once again.